not adjust your tracking. You are now listening to the VH Saturday podcast.
Hello, and welcome to VH Saturday, the show where we discuss the strange, unusual, odd, and obscure VHS tapes that we obtain through thrift, gift, and grift. My name is Henry.
And I'm Allison.
And this week we watched a tape that doesn't need a whole lot of introduction. It has a bit of a cult following. Allison, what did we watch?
We watched the classic Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults.
So this tape was put out in 1994 by World Entertainment. They are a Christian-based film company. This one was part of a multi-series about the Satanic Panic.
Yes, and for anyone who doesn't know about the Satanic Panic, is basically this cultural phenomenon from the 80s and 90s about some kind of, basically people were really scared that everyone was a Satanist. And there was no real evidence to back this up, but a lot of certain groups kind of freaked out about it. So you had, Christian groups, law enforcement,
left and right. There's all kinds of moral outrage. It's all over talk shows. Like Oprah did an episode on it, multiple episodes on it. Geraldo Rivera did a big documentary about it,
like a multi-part series.
And it was all based on absolutely fictional, circumstantial evidence, a lot of false memories that were more or less planted by law enforcement, interviewing children that were toddlers.
Yes. This all kind of started in daycares. So back in the 80s, daycare was kind of a new concept because women were entering the workforce for the first time on such a large scale. And I think people were mostly just afraid and they clung to some kind of worst case scenario. Maybe their kids were acting kind of weird and they didn't know why. And so they just kind of thought they were being abused at the daycare. And it was just crazy. There were really long drawn out trials. And a lot of the kids said things about, cannibalism and underground tunnels under their daycares and all this sacrificing and all this crazy satanic stuff. But a lot of the kids have actually grown up to admit that they were just making it up.
A lot of them felt like they were, because what it was, the cops would say things, were there sacrifices? Was there mutilations? And you're a child, so you're just like, okay, what does the cop want to hear? The cops are the good guys, right? So you're just gonna tell the cop, yeah, sure, man, that was there.
I think there was one interview that I read where a child had said that basically they got a lot of positive reinforcement if they agreed with their leading questions. And so, when you're a child, you just want to please the authority figures in your life. Of course, you're just gonna kind of agree with whatever they're saying. And because the kids couldn't really, express it themselves, the cops had to kind of lead them into saying what happened. And that kind of led to a situation where the kids were just like, yeah, totally. There were underground tunnels where ritualistic sexual abuse
It's like, I can imagine that probably came from, well, how do they get to the daycare? Is there a tunnel? Sure. Yeah, there's a tunnel.
Yeah.
That's all it is. If you've seen Making a Murderer, then, it's the exact same scenario as that.
Right.
But on a much grander scale.
Yeah. So basically, that combined with a book that came out of this Canadian psychotherapist had been using, I want to say it's hypnosis or something to try to uncover these repressed memories from one of his patients, and kind of a similar thing where he ended up just kind of planting stuff in her mind. And I don't want to invalidate throughout this whole Satanic Panic, and specifically this video, you hear a lot of accounts of abuse, and I don't want to make fun of these people or try to downplay what they're saying, because even though we don't have evidence to support that what they are saying happened is true, I still think it's kind of fucked up to say that like maybe nothing happened to them.
Right.
These people may actually be victims of abuse, but whether or not this abuse was actually like satanic or ritual in that way is very hard to prove and very unlikely.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump ahead for 1 second. Towards I want to say like the third quarter of the film, they do have an interview with someone that claims to have been a survivor of these rituals. And the production manager, in an interview I read much later, says he didn't believe her, but he does believe she went through something.
Yeah.
There was some sort of trauma that she did go through, not necessarily a satanic ritual, but there was legitimate trauma he felt, just not what she was saying.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So this whole thing, before we get into it, I just want to preface that like there is a lot about this that is absolutely hilarious, and I am very excited to get into all of that and laugh at all of the ridiculous shit that's in this video. But I do want to preface and say that there is a lot of talk of like abuse and stuff specifically towards children. So, if that makes you uncomfortable or anything, we'll try not to talk about it too much, but
we're going to focus on the funny parts of this. There's a lot to unpack with this tape in particular. The whole thing with Satanic Panic, there's a lot of really, dramatic bullshit that happened that's not fun at all. This tape, though, is pretty fun for the first, half.
Yeah.
And then it gets funny again right at the tail end.
Yes.
But man, there is a very, very uncomfortable, I want to say like 20, 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, where they just go into all of these like signs of satanic abuse in children, and it's like these just sound like regular signs of abuse in children.
They literally just go off, they rattle on
forever.
It's just a bullet list. They have the screen just shows like this generic backdrop of like a brick wall.
That's like fucking Jerry Springer.
It does look very much like a Jerry Springer graphic. And then they got this like pentagram at the top. And it says signs of abuse. And they just start going through like all these signs of like physical and psychological signs of sexual abuse in children. And it has nothing to do with Satanism. It's like, these are things to keep an eye out for.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily somebody being satanic near your child. That's just somebody around your child is not a good person. That's really what that is.
Right. So I think the thing about this that's so crazy. So Henry got me this tape for Christmas.
Yeah, we don't unfortunately have an authentic copy. I bought a bootleg from our friend Tape Eater.
Shout out to Tape Eater. Follow him on Instagram. He sells some really cool shit. So the artwork on the cover is so you see the original cover of the film, which is just like a white label with black text. It says Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults, and then in a box at the bottom it says Officer Training Purposes Only. Unauthorized viewers may be subject to prosecution under penalty of law. And what's interesting is that what we read, first of all, there's not too much information about the making of this tape out there, but what we did find was a pretty in-depth interview with one of the production managers, like we mentioned earlier, and he said that this wasn't exactly produced specifically for law enforcement, that I think they made this with the intent of parents,
law enforcement, and parents.
Yeah,
like they wanted churches to buy this because their main market was producing tapes for churches. But which actually makes sense because he is a cop and a pastor.
Right.
Gordon Coulter, he's a screenwriter for this. He's a cop and a pastor.
Yes.
So it makes sense. Those are his markets there.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, he definitely believes this stuff.
Yeah. He's the main guy you'll see talking. He's the main narrator. He's the guy wearing a Cosby sweater.
Yeah. Kind of Wilford Brimley looking kind of guy.
He does look like Wilford Brimley.
Yeah, he's got that look that kind of like I don't know.
Like almost
that
all the
je ne sais quoi.
Like just imagine Wilford Brimley like in like a San Francisco Bay, like just talking about this sort of thing.
All of the backdrops, like they interview him, you know, like he's literally standing there talking to the camera, but the backdrop is always this like beautiful, like San Francisco, like you can see the bay on top of the hill and like the city, and it's so nice. And he's just like talking about all of this crazy stuff.
The tape starts out with a montage of, I want to say, medieval artwork of like Satan and like and demons and shit like that.
Yeah.
As it starts just talking about the First Amendment and how the freedom of religion allows these sort of things to happen.
Okay, so throughout the movie, I actually took a counter of how many times they blamed the Constitution. I said, the Constitution makes our job hard, frowny face. Counter 3. So there are 3 times in this movie they mention, like, you know, so I just closed the tape. That like, oh, you know, a lot of the things they do aren't illegal. However, it would be a lot easier to prosecute them if we didn't have that stubborn First Amendment.
Like, at the same time, the way it's so... He toes that line very well. You can tell he's a cop because he toes that line of like
because he's like, if only we didn't have due process and I could just throw people in jail.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the fact that he's like that he was like, now not all Satanists commit crimes. To me, I was like, oh, all right. That's like thanks for acknowledging the fact that, you know, Satanism is a actual religion for a lot of people. He didn't read the church the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey. He mentions it multiple times.
Yes.
It gets name dropped a bajillion times. They keep mentioning Anton LaVey. But according to the production manager, Carlo Bertocchini, not Carlo, Carly, Carrie? I don't know how to pronounce it. Carrie Bertocchini.
Bertoncini.
Carlo Bertocchini's a robot builder.
Carrie Bertoncini.
He's the production manager, and he said he's the only one that read the Satanic Bible.
Yeah, he said he read the whole thing.
Yeah.
But like everyone else working on the movie wouldn't even look at it because they were scared.
And it's like, if you read Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible, you'll realize it's not even actually about, you know, Satan.
It is interesting because so the production manager talked about the basically how he was approaching this project from an academic perspective, that he was like, okay, you know, I want to find, like, in a journalistic kind of way, like, I want to find the information and I want to portray that information to my audience in a way they can understand. Whereas, what's his name?
Gordon, yeah.
Gordon Coulter, the Wilford Brimley cop pastor, he was more like wanting to make people scared, that it was about inciting fear.
Yeah, he literally wanted to make a shockumentary.
Yes.
So
there was a bit of a clash in terms of the production, that it seems that they got this idea in their head that this satanic stuff was happening and that's all they needed.
Well, I mean, like, the entire crew has a very interesting background. So I'll go over. I took notes on all this. So of course we have cop pastor Gordon Coulter. He's the screenwriter. Warrior Entertainment, the Christian film company that put this out. The producer Lenny McGill, who now owns the largest Glock mega store for firearms, and he's made over 300 videos about guns.
Yeah, and didn't they specifically hire him for the job because of his law enforcement audience?
I believe so.
That he was basically just like a gun video guy.
And so they figured that was a perfect like tie-in to that kind of audience.
And so he had, like, his videos had a big following amongst law enforcement. So
then you got Devin DeHaven, who made Christian metal band videos. So like he eventually was doing videos for like POD. Then he started like branching out to other stuff and started doing videos for like Carrie Underwood, and then eventually for Kiss, which is funny.
That's interesting.
And then we of course have our production manager. We mentioned Carrie Bertoncini, and then the occult expert Eric Pryor, who's the star of this film.
The self-described alleged
former satanic high priestess who is now
high priest.
Yes, yeah, my bad.
Well, hey, I don't want to assume,
He's got that mullet. I just saw the long hair. I saw the long hair.
Priest in the front, priestess in the back.
So they start out talking about, like I said, they start with this montage of medieval artwork talking about the cult explosion, how much of an issue is for law enforcement, and they start breaking out the 3 levels of Satanism. First is, they literally call them dabblers.
I loved that.
Dabblers.
Oh, I just dabble.
Why just dabble in Satanism? A little Satanism on the left on the weekends.
For fun, maybe a little graffiti.
They literally said for fun and games. And he was like, video games and graffiti, but they literally said dabbling in it for fun and games. Like,
yeah, I used a Ouija board once. I guess you could say I'm a dabbler.
Then the second stage is spiritual involvement. People are trying to find some sort of spiritual enlightenment through Satanism.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I don't know. I just like being a part of a group.
Checks out. They got cool cloaks. And then criminal involvement.
They gain power through criminal activity.
So if people are spiritual, they want to gain power. They believe they can gain power through Satanism.
Right.
And then criminal involvement is people that think the criminal activity is what gives them power.
Yeah.
But
that's, just like the introductory part of the tape, just kind of like easing you into the whole thing. Then we cut to like what I would call the meat and potatoes of like this whole experience, where they go to this park in San Francisco, and we're shown around this park by Eric Pryor, the guy who basically with the mullet, who was like, oh yeah, I used to be in a satanic cult, but now I'm a Christian, so I'm gonna show you guys what to look for. And so they're walking around the park and they find quite a lot of satanic symbols just in the wild.
So it starts out with, like they're walking up. It's Alamo Park in San Francisco. That's the same park where the intro to Full House is shot in.
Wow.
That's one of the funniest parts of me, is just the fact that
that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's
that's great.
Like this is like 4 years after they filmed the first episode of Full House there. It's amusing to think about, because as soon as he walks into the park, he says, oh, look right behind us. Like, they walk in and immediately he's like, we have a pentagram.
Yeah, they're like, so they're pretty much just like walking down this trail, and like the first fucking tree that they see has like a pentagram on it, or he calls it a pentacle. But he's like, oh, it's an upright pentacle. It's like normally it's supposed to be upside down, but this one is right side up, and so it's like
he's like, it's not satanic, but it is a cult. Like, it's a cult, but it's not satanic, because when it's upside down, the 2 points are supposed to represent Baphomet's horns.
Yeah, so like the first, quote unquote piece of evidence that we find isn't even
it's not
legitimate.
Satanic.
Like, it's
but whoa, hold on there, Allison. Right across the fucking aisle from this tree.
Yeah, I mean, is on the literal other side of the path, like 4 feet away.
He's like, oh, but look over here. We have an inverted cross. This is satanic because it's inverted.
You know what? We forgot to mention the fact that, like, before we even find this upright pentacle, he says there's 2 types of people who come to this park.
The cult community
and homosexuals.
They go hand in hand.
And I'm like, wow, okay, we're just coming right out with the homophobia, aren't we?
Well, to me, I'm like, gays in San Francisco?
Taking a nice stroll around the park?
Gays in the park in San Francisco?
Well, I never.
I would never expect to see homosexuals in San fucking Francisco.
He's like, okay, so if those are the only 2 kinds of people who go to this park, like, what are you, pal? Because apparently you're not a Satanist anymore, so.
No, not at all. But he literally says, there we go, as soon as we enter him. But he starts like, we just keep going, and it's just this nonstop barrage. Like, just like, imagine we don't deviate from this trail at all either.
No.
So we're going. It's not like a park where there's like deep woods or anything else like that. It keeps going, and like we see Voodoo Vivi. That's some of the other things he mentions, like Voodoo Vivi, where it's like shit just drawn on the ground.
But they mentioned that, like, so throughout the movie they make all these distinctions that, like, okay, so Satanism is different than witchcraft, it's different than paganism, and it's different than voodoo.
Which, you know, to be fair, I acknowledge him for doing that, because a lot of people that might be viewing this tape will lump all that shit together.
Sure, but like at the same time, they're lumping them together too. Why would they even bring them up if they have nothing to do with Satanism?
I think they were doing that to make you... I would hope, in my heart of hearts, I would hope that the reasoning is, hey, voodoo is a legitimate religion. If someone... you see someone doing this and you think, whoa, that's Satanism. Like, oh, wait, no, that's voodoo. Let them do their thing, unless you want to be a complete asshole. Same thing with Wiccan. Like, well, like they talk about witchcraft, but what they were describing is actually like Wicca rituals, and like now, like for example, within like the United States military, they actually have Wiccan churches on military bases.
Really?
Yeah, you can actually have like Wicca on your dog tags. Even if you have a military burial on your tombstone, it can say Wiccan now. That changed in 2007 is when they started allowing that.
Wow.
Okay, so there's that.
I also wanted to mention that, like, so this park, when this whole like scene where we're walking through this park, it keeps cutting to this like graphic of the park, like a drawing of the park from like an overhead view, and it looks like one of those, you know, those like mats you have as a kid on the floor that's like a little street and you push the cars around on it. It looks like that, but like of this park, and you know, they show it a million fucking times throughout this whole time they're in the park, and it's not relevant. They're not like, you know, putting a little point on the map being like, oh, we're here now, or we're here now. It's just like,
here's the map.
Hey, here's what the park looks like overhead. Isn't that cool?
And they do it again.
And they do it again.
And again.
And again. And it never stops. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Why are you even doing that?
Then we get to the more graffiti, right? He starts showing off more and more graffiti because...
yeah. So we go up, like, he goes like up a hill and gets to this like a parking lot area.
Yeah, there's like a brick wall and there's like a swastika painted, but then there's also like some other shit painted on there.
Yeah, there was a 666 and an eye and also a swastika, but we're just gonna
don't even mention the swastika at all.
Should have breezed like, right past that.
Just ignore the swastika. Look at the eye, and he was talking about how the eye was how Satanists would tell each other like, this is where you perform this one kind of ritual or whatever the fuck. And then, like, they've mentioned, like, leaving, like, a trail of breadcrumbs, essentially.
Right.
Between points and points of the park. And like I said, this park isn't exactly large. Like...
No, it's very...
So, like, there's, like, buildings. Like, that was a brick wall that they painted this on a building. And then we go around the corner from this to some dumpsters. Some literal dumpsters. And it shows gang graffiti. And it says, oh, this is how gangs talk to each other with graffiti. And this is how cults talk to each other, too. With graffiti. And he shows
it's like a mushroom.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I know people who have been in the local graffiti scene and stuff, and graffiti is not always a gang thing.
Not at all.
Not at all. And from what I've learned is that you have your tag, right? You have your name or like your little symbol that you draw or something. Like you have your thing. Typically it's like a name and it's your tag, and you just like go and you tag your name, and that's how like other graffiti people know that like you were there. That's really all it is. And so it was like a little drawing of a mushroom with the word mush underneath it, but it was written in like graffiti font. So, you know, I'm sure the average Joe wouldn't be able to read it, but it's like, okay, so obviously this is just a tag from some guy who goes by Mush.
Probably because he likes mushrooms.
He likes drawing mushrooms. They're cool.
This is the fucking Bay Area.
Yeah.
He probably has done mushrooms one time or another.
Yeah. So they mentioned, oh, this is obvious evidence of a psilocybin ritual.
Psilocybin mushroom, or the psilocybin ritual that the Satanists use for one reason or another. It's like, that's just some stoner that likes dabbling in mushrooms.
Like, yo, let's take some shrooms, let's go to the park, and let's draw on a dumpster. Like, it's not that deep, bro.
Like, or some dude hanging out going, man, I wish I had some fucking shrooms right now.
Yeah, right?
Just like doodling. It's not even that great of a drawing. It's a literal doodle.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
But it's, it's evidence of Satan.
It's evidence. All this is so much evidence. This is Alamo Park. No, this is Evidence Park.
That's what, honestly, like, that's just the root of the entire satanic panic in general, is like, let's find Satanism in places where there is no Satanism.
Speaking of finding Satanism, the next thing we see is a noose.
Oh my god!
He finds a noose with and he starts
just in the grass.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, well, here we have a rope and it's tied like a noose, and he starts just handling it. Like, listen, motherfucker. I think it's one thing to kind of poke around with some graffiti, but like, oh, I found a noose in the park. And there's blood on it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, check it out. He's holding it with his bare hands, holding it up to the camera like, wow, look at all that blood on this noose.
He's like, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but look, there's fresh blood on this.
And I'm just like, bro, don't touch that with your bare hands. Are you fucking insane?
Like, if this is evidence of of a sacrifice, because we talking about it was used for like either human or animal sacrifice, it's like, why are you fucking touching it, bro?
Yeah, why are you touching it?
Do you think he's still part of the Satanic Church and he knows that's what it was used for, and now he's like contaminating it so on camera so he can be like when they're like, so
he just reformed that morning and that was all just like leftovers from the night before.
Is he even like reformed? Maybe this is a cover. So right, he's like, fuck, we did some rituals and we left the fucking rope there. Oh, now I'm gonna go film with these cops. I'm gonna show them all this evidence. Like, whoa, check out this rope.
Wasn't me though.
Like, well, Mr. Pryor, your DNA's on there. Well, yeah, because I picked it up on camera to show you guys, remember? Damn. That's how my DNA's already on there.
That's low-key pretty genius.
I don't think it's really that smart, though.
No.
He's got a mullet. He's not that smart.
Oh my god. And like, especially because all of the like symbols that we see painted on the trees and shit, like, it's all like, looks kind of fresh.
It looks pretty fresh.
It looks pretty fresh. Like, and they asked the production manager in the interview, they were like, hey, so this stuff kind of looks like it was planted.
Did you guys plant it?
Did you do it? And he was like, well, maybe they did, but if they did, I didn't see it.
He says the production crew didn't do it, but he would not be surprised, and he does believe that Mr. Pryor did plant it prior to filming.
Yeah.
So there's that, but there's so much just damning evidence, just like left and right, willy nilly. Like I was really expecting like graffiti just as Satan was here.
Yeah.
Like
right.
Just that was like what I was expecting.
If you haven't seen this tape, you can actually find a full upload on YouTube.
This is the best part of it. Like,
yeah, and so I think it's definitely worth watching, because if you haven't seen it for yourself, it might be hard to understand like exactly what we're looking at. But it's like, it's very conspicuous how it's just like everywhere.
And he even says like some of the paint's fresh. Like, oh, the paint's pretty fresh.
Yeah, I was like, that's interesting.
Is that because you just got done painting it there? Yeah. Like, the paint's pretty fresh. You know, the spray paint cans are in the back of my car.
Oh
like,
my god.
It's but as much as I thought he was just such a plant, right? Like that they grabbed some fucking schmuck he's playing up a part. But according to the interview, the production manager believes this dude was pretty legit, you know? Yeah,
that like he used to be actually in a satanic cult.
Yeah.
I would believe that, because in a little while they do cut to this scene where he's kind of like showing what a traditional satanic altar looks like, and it's like he's got all of this, like he's got like daggers and chalices and candles and all this crazy shit, and he's showing like the different powders and incense and all this crap that's like used in these rituals, and I'm like, where did he get all this stuff? Like, is this his stuff?
Like, I think, yeah, it would have had to be his. Like, but then again, that was also in that scenario. He was also breaking down differences between a Wiccan altar, a Satanic altar, and a Voodoo altar. And the vibe I actually got, like I said, was the fact that like, oh, if you stumble upon this, but you see like a fucking what's the fucking bowl thingy called? Brick
and mortar and pestle.
Yeah, mortar and pestle. That like it's like, oh, that's just from Wiccans. Don't worry about that. Like because he's like those are Wiccans. They use it for their incense because the incense are always used by the Wiccans. He was saying.
Yeah, like when they were talking about the stuff that the Wiccans did, I'm like, that's really not that bad. Like they're just lighting candles and smelling incense.
Yeah, and
that's not bad.
And he wasn't saying it was bad. Like I feel like honest to God, that part felt to me like saying, this is what some people do, and it looks really similar, but don't freak out necessarily if you see a voodoo altar. Yeah. It's just voodoo, you know? Mm-hmm. So, which sounds fucked up. Well, it's just voodoo, but I mean...
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, part of me wants to believe that, but then because of the origin of this film being a, like, Christian company based out of the South, part of me says, you know... I don't think they meant it in the, hey, don't worry about the voodoo, don't worry about the Wiccans. But you see what I'm saying? Like, it seems like my brain says, oh, they're just telling you don't worry about those. But like, because I know the origin of this, I feel like at the same time, they are saying be on the lookout, but that way you know how to identify which one's which. But apparently like, this guy wore like long sleeves the entire time in the film because he had scars all over his arms.
Yeah. So they believe that they're like, okay, so this guy's definitely been through some shit.
Yeah.
Like, he had these crazy scars on his arms and stuff, and they're like, I don't know if he did it. I don't know if someone did it to him, but, like, he got fucked up somehow.
They left a lot on the cutting room floor with him. They left a lot. He got into some really, really gnarly details about animal sacrifice and and harming himself for, like, the church and other shit like that. They just went really, really in depth, and they didn't put that in there. It was too gnarly for this VHS tape. Mm-hmm. But you know, but then they start talking about, like I said, they mention Anton LaVey a whole lot.
Yeah, and they get into like all of this shit from the Satanic Bible. Like they talk about the 9 satanic statements. They talk about let's see. The initiation and all this stuff. Like
they did go really, really in depth on like what it takes to be initiated into the Church of Satan, and then they start talking about the gratification of flesh, the gratification of ego, and power, which are like the 3 fundamentals of Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. Mm-hmm. And then
basically just like denial of Christian faith, rebaptism in Satan's name, and an oath of allegiance in a magic circle, and then a promise to sacrifice children.
Yeah, and those parts aren't actually part of like Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. Those are just things they said that like I don't know where they got that information because it's not from the Satanic Bible at all.
Yeah, I don't know.
The 9 satanic statements from the Satanic Bible sounded pretty good.
Okay, so let's see. Satan represents indulgence. Okay.
Vital existence.
Undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. Kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted. Vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. Responsibility to the responsible. Man as just another animal. All of the so-called sins lead to gratification, and that they are the best friend to the church because it keeps them in business. That is true. That is very true.
It is very true. And like the man is just another animal, and they said man is another animal, sometimes worse than those that are walking on all 4s, mm-hmm. but because of that, it makes them like basically the apex predator and the worst animal. And it's like, these are all very valid statements, to be perfectly fucking honest.
Yeah, so like one of the very first things we hear in the movie as a whole is he says, when he's describing Satanism, is that which is bad is good, and that which is good is bad. And because, you know, Christianity, you have this idea that like, okay, God created man in his image, and being human is like this amazing privilege, and that's why we should worship God and we should be thankful and all this stuff. Whereas like this description of Satanism seems to be like, you know what? Like, you don't have to love thy neighbor. If your neighbor's an asshole, like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, oh, you, like, man is just like any other animal. And as a matter of fact, the fact that we have free will and, like, more advanced brains can actually make us more evil.
Yep.
And I don't know, like, it seems like it makes sense.
It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier, like because I've researched like Anton LaVey and such, like the Anton LaVey's concept of, you know, Satanism isn't actually about worshiping a red dude that lives, you know, in hell with like a tail and horns and shit. That's not what the Church of Satan from Anton LaVey is actually
hooks
about.
Up with Saddam Hussein.
Hey, guy. But,
oh boy.
Really, it's about worshiping yourself. That's what it is. And like, if they never mentioned Anton LaVey in this at all, I'd be like, all right, that's fair. But the fact that like I know what that version of Satanism, quote unquote, is actually about, they chose the name just to be edgy.
I think that's really all it is. It's just edginess. And it's like these Christian fundamentalist groups looking at all of this stuff and being like, clutching their pearls. Oh my God, how could this happen? They're Satanists. They just want the exact opposite of what we want. And like the reason why they chose it, and that's almost why he chose it. He chose it not, you know, it's not, oh, it's the opposite of what we want. It's the fact that like they looked at like things in the Bible that were not great, and they're like, oh, you know what? This belief is the inverse of that. Instead of worshiping something that we can't see exists, we're going to worship ourselves because that's what we could focus on. Mm-hmm. And so he chose the name Church of Satan just because it's the inverse of that, of Christianity, and also to be edgy in the 1960s. Yeah. And that was pretty fucking edgy for the 1960s. Let's be fucking real. So I mean, apparently it was edgy for the 1980s and the early 1990s as well.
His wife looks like Taylor Swift. Have you seen her?
No? What?
Yeah, hold on. I'll pull a picture of her real quick.
Yeah, show me.
Anton LaVey's wife.
Carol Lansing.
Hold on. And then let me find this Taylor Swift.
Holy shit!
Zena LaVey.
Whoa!
Zena LaVey looks like Taylor Swift.
Oh my god! Holy shit, dude!
Oh, she's the daughter, not his wife. Okay, that's why. Yeah.
Oh.
Anton LaVey's daughter looks like Taylor fucking Swift.
Yes, she does. Wow. All right, you learned something new every day.
Swift is really part of the Church of Satan.
I knew it.
Makes so much sense. It explains everything.
So, like, a thing that I wanted to talk about was, so earlier when they were talking about, like, oh, you know, not all Satanists are bad and commit crimes, but here are some things that you should look out for just to, you know, make sure, like, when you're investigating something, if you see this stuff, maybe take into consideration that it could be satanic. And so he lists these as kind of like, they're seemingly innocent, but could be satanic underneath. And he goes on, okay, I'll list just some of the things that I wrote down. Vandalism, trespass, animal cruelty, kidnapping, rape, arson, murder, human sacrifice, cannibalism, drug trafficking, sexual trafficking of children, corpse theft, black market body part sales, pedophilia, pornography, torture, desecration of churches, human slavery, weapons violations, suicide, disposing of animal parts, necrophilia. The list goes on. And I'm like, these are supposed to be innocent activities? Like, what are you talking about, dude?
That's all around the time they start showing symbols that, you know, oh, these are symbols your teenager might be using in places that don't necessarily correlate to Satanism, but they do correlate to Satanism. He showed the anarchy symbol, right? And then
do you remember when, like, what fucking shoe company was it that started selling shoes with, like, the anarchy symbol on it?
Oh, I don't even know.
Oh my god, I remember seeing them when I was in, I don't know, maybe like junior high or early high school.
Anarchy symbol?
Yeah, because you know how like kids, they're edgy and it's easy. It's like that fucking S, you know?
Oh.
Like the S that everyone drew. It was like everyone also was just like, you know, doing like an A and putting a circle around it. They're like, yeah, anarchy, you know?
That was me in junior high. Like, I remember I did anarchy graffiti. Like I got in trouble on like a spray painted.
I remember being like, wow, that's so, you know, that's so edgy. And like, look, I was an edgy tween, all right? But like, even I saw people like writing anarchy symbols and stuff, and I was like, you're not a fucking anarchist. Get out of here.
Like,
get out of here. And then like I saw some kids started wearing these shoes that had the anarchy symbol on them, and I was like, you're like, what is this, corporate
right?
anarchy?
I was
What
gonna
is
bring it
this
up, like,
shit?
because like I said, I would spray paint it on places. Like I said, I told you before, I got in trouble for graffiti as a teenager. But when I would see kids that would have things that they purchased at like Hot Topic and Spencer that had the anarchy symbol, I'm like,
Yeah.
you bought that? They're
Yeah.
like, yeah. I'm like, you paid taxes to the government
Right.
to wear something with the anarchy symbol?
Yeah.
Do you even
Yeah.
understand
And
what
I'm like,
you're...
you're just trying to be edgy. And that's why, like, this whole thing is so fucking ridiculous. Because it's like, yeah, okay, so even if you found this, like, backwards ass swastika spray painted on a fucking dumpster, you're gonna be like, oh, look, Satanism, it's Satanism. It's like, no, it's kids are just like, they know that their parents are fucking religious, pearl clutching, so they just want to, like, vent somewhere.
I mean, that's the other part though. Like they show, after they show the anarchy symbol as like one of the signs, they show the swastika.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't mention Nazis at all.
No, so they're going through all of these symbols and explaining like how they've been used in an evil context. And so like the swastika comes up because like the first swastika that we saw in the movie that was like spray painted on the wall or whatever, they just didn't even mention it.
Yeah.
But when they're going through these symbols, they show the swastika and they say something like, oh, this symbol was once used by witches and warlocks and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's the only evil context you could think of that symbol being used? That's the only one?
There wasn't one that, you know, was a lot grander scale and more well known at all.
More, you know, documented murders and torture.
No, not at all.
No, man. It was just once upon a time, long ago, witches and warlocks used this symbol to demonstrate their evil powers.
One thing that irked me about that too was they didn't even use a proper swastika. So the swastika, as everyone knows, was originally a Buddhist symbol called the manji, and they tilted it 45 degrees. That's how you can tell the difference between a swastika and a manji. A manji is like flat, you know. A swastika is like, you know, diamond shaped essentially.
Right.
But they show a manji and they call it a swastika. And it's like, okay, great. So now you're telling all these fuckers that like see like Buddhist temples that have a manji, like, oh, Satanism.
But that's not the only time we get Nazi mentions of Nazi stuff, because then in the same segment, when they start talking about cult leaders, they mention Hitler.
They call him a cult leader.
It's
like, all right, so we're acknowledging that like the Nazis were a cult, but we're gonna leave out their symbol.
Yeah.
In your explanation of cult symbols.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, like, I was just like, bro, like, are you for real right now? But this is where the movie kind of starts getting boring, if I'm being honest. Like,
yeah.
Because then they start getting into the whole, like, you know,
black masses. They start talking about black masses, and they mention, like, entering the vagina of the altar? That was pretty confused. I don't know what the fuck that means.
Like, black mass is, like, what, like a Satanist version of mass?
Yeah, and it's supposed to be, like, the darkest of dark things, where that's where the actual, like, sacrifice and rape of children is supposed to theoretically take place.
Yeah, and so they're mentioning like how this ritual is done, and they're like, they take the wafer, which is traditionally a representation of the body of Christ, and put it in the vagina of the altar. And I'm like, we got a whole demonstration of what those altars looked like earlier, and nowhere was I told where the vagina was on that.
I don't understand. Like, what does that even mean?
What does that mean?
What does that mean? I don't want to Google it. But like,
Just make sure you turn safe search on.
Like, I don't want to Google that, but I need to know what is the vagina of an altar.
I don't know.
But then they start talking to the ritual survivor. They have her where like she's blacked out, you can't see her at all. It's pretty depressing. It shows drawings of like things that happen and mentions like being in a cage and such. But like I said, this is the person that the production manager doesn't believe it was a satanic situation she was in, but does believe that there was trauma that happened.
And then they get into, you know, what we talked about earlier, like detecting these signs in kids, and like it went on for way too long and it was just super uncomfortable and weird, and the detail that they went into was entirely unnecessary and very creepy.
And it's such whiplash because you go from like, you know, giggling at like Mr. Pryor up there, like, you know, but then like
we do get a little shining light in this sea of darkness, though, when they start going over the dates of the Satanic calendar.
The Satanic calendar is great because, fuck, man, Satanists are busy.
They are busy. They got a lot of holidays.
So many. If you think it's rough having, you know, Christmas and birthdays and Easter, try being a Satanist, apparently, because holy shit.
You got some kind of fucking ritual or something to do like every 2 weeks.
If they just go down the entire calendar of the year and it's like literally multiple holidays a month, some of them that last like a week long, like holy shit, you gotta make sure you get someone for like Michaelmas, which happens, and then like then they talk about Halloween. Halloween, of course, they say is like three days long in the, if you're saying this. And they say Halloween is actually about sex with demons and the sacrifice of children. I never had sacrifice a child on Halloween. Have you sacrificed a child on Halloween?
I have had sex with a demon.
Who? Yes, I love that part. We all know that Halloween is sex with demons.
Fuck yeah.
But like, they say it's sex with demons and a sacrifice of children. We've all celebrated Halloween. We've all fucked a demon. I don't know anyone who sacrificed a child on that day.
Maybe it's like, it's considered sacrificing children because like if you feed them enough candy, they're likely to die.
You're sacrificing children by giving them all diabetes.
And we circle right back to Wilford Brimley. Just like that.
It's just like that. All the way.
Show's over, folks.
But after the Satanic calendar scenario, which goes on for, I want to say like 5 minutes, where it's literally just like
it goes through the whole year, and they have like 500 fucking holidays.
Yeah, like I'm not even like joking. If you were to theoretically be a real Satanist that does all this, that's a lot of people you got to be sacrificing, because so many of these holidays involve sacrificing a person. It's like, holy shit, how fucking many people you got to sacrifice? You think if this was an actual epidemic, they would have gotten caught,
right? Well, no, he says they don't get caught because they eat the bodies after they're done sacrificing
there's no evidence.
them. So there's no evidence. Makes sense to me.
What do they do with the bones?
The bones they sell on the black market to other Satanists.
So the Satanists still have bones?
Yes, but they get rid of them very quickly.
To other Satanists?
Yes. Okay, yeah, this doesn't make sense.
So it's just like this large surplus of human bones passing from like Satanists to other Satanists. Like, why would other Satanists buy the bones? Because they're already trying to get rid of their own bones. They gotta get rid of. Like,
wow,
it makes no fucking sense. There would be like surplus of human bones.
Okay, so I was trying to find a copy of the Satanic calendar for reference, and I could not find the same Satanic calendar that they used in the film, but I did find a page from the actual, like, the satanictemple.com, and it looks like we just passed a Satan holiday. Lupercalia?
Well, happy belated Lupercalia to everybody.
Yeah, February 15th, celebration of bodily autonomy, sexual liberation, and reproduction.
Oh, it's based on a Roman holiday.
In keeping with the ancient tradition, February 13th and 14th are observed as feast days leading up to the actual holiday. What we are translating this to in TST is a Hail Yourself Day. This idea offers a parallel to the other-centered traditions of Sol Invictus.
You know what I say? Like, the Church is saying it's all about just loving yourself, man.
Yeah, so wait, so Valentine's Day for them is we feast for 2 days and then we fuck?
And then, you know, you feel good about yourself because it's Hail Yourself Day. Yeah.
That sounds dope!
Yeah.
That's like every week for me, pretty much.
That's just what happens before we fucking record the show.
Hail Satan.
Speaking of shouting Hail Satan, they go over next Richard Ramirez and all the other murderers that supposedly were Satanists.
Oh, you mean the one other murderer that was supposedly a Satanist? Clifford St. Joseph?
They mentioned the whoever Son of Sam.
Yeah.
Richard Ramirez, Son of Sam. Richard Ramirez was not a Satanist.
No,
you know,
he was an edgelord.
He
killed people.
He was a fucked up person that killed fucking people, but they're like, oh, he shouted Hail Satan at the end of his trial. Yeah, dude, because he wanted attention. That's why he murdered people, and now he's being taken away to jail for fucking ever.
Can't get attention in jail. Well, not good attention.
You don't want attention in jail.
I mean, yeah.
But so the last thing he could do while having attention, of course, he's gonna do something that's gonna be like super edgy, make people fucking talk about him because here you fucking are like 30 something years later. He yells "Hail Satan" because
mission accomplished. Way to play right into his fucking
right.
You activated his trap card.
Like that's all he wanted to do. He just wanted to get one more reaction.
Yeah,
out of people.
And so then like this Clifford St. Joseph guy. We don't even know for sure if he committed the crime that he was accused of. As a matter of fact, the Innocence Project has been trying really hard to use DNA evidence to try to get him off scot-free because they feel that he was wrongly accused and he defends his innocence to this day.
Clifford St. Joseph, for those that don't know, he is the case where he is the only actual case that somebody has been charged with human sacrifice,
like convicted of it. Yeah.
So he's still in jail. He's been in jail for like a bajillion years at this point because of it. But then like this part of the movie, when they started talking about this case with Clifford St. Joseph, gets boring as fucking shit.
Oh my god, this whole section is just so boring because they're interviewing this like cop in San Francisco, and they're just sitting down interviewing him, and this interview goes on for so fucking long, and you can't even understand what he's saying because the audio quality is all shitty, and he's like mumbling, and I'm just like falling asleep. Like, oh my god.
He's just mumbling, and he's just in like, they shot it inside like the police station. Like he's like in some interview room. Yeah. And
like an interrogation room or something.
And he's just going over the entire case and how they convicted him and the evidence they had and all this other shit. And it just goes on and on and on. I want to say for like 15, 20 minutes.
It felt like forever. And by the end of it, I'm just like, oh my god, please tell me this is over. And then
I wanted to fast forward, but then I saw the timestamp on the VCR. I was like, oh, I know how close we are to the end. I got this. We got this.
And this tape goes out with a bang, with one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my life ever. We cut to the bikini girl scene.
The bikini girl. So we got what's this fucker's name? The cop pastor Gordon Coulter. Yeah. He changes out of his Cosby sweater, and now he's got like
this weird like
lounge button up going on
with this weird like 90s pattern. Like it's like a silk shirt. It's got this like weird like screen printed fucking print on it.
It looks so like something that Guy Fieri will be like, no, I won't wear that. But it's
a little gauche for Guy.
So we get to the point where they want to show how these sacrifices are done. Right. So he's in this dark looking, like it looks like a almost dungeon-esque room. And he pulls this sheet off this table, and we got this girl in like a checkered bikini.
Yeah, this like she's laying on this table in a bikini covered with a sheet, and he just like peels the sheet down to show all of these like markings that they drew on her
with
like,
a fucking Sharpie pen.
Yeah.
Like, it's very clearly Sharpie pen.
and he's like, you know, fucking like hover handing over her like, this is where like they carve this symbol into the chest and this means do. And
they have like, they show like on her above her breast, she's got like a pentagram on each side, and like
there's like an X on the side of her neck with like a dashed line going under her neck,
like where they would like cut it, like cut here,
yeah,
like
yeah, like the little
cut along the dotted
scissors.
line. Exactly. But they said like the priest, the high priest, would like write his like carve his like name into like the chest and
then
stuff.
she has another giant pentagram like on her stomach.
Yeah, like 3 pentagrams. Like.
Yeah, and then these like weird markings on her feet, and like it's just strange because she's just like laying there pretending to be dead the whole time.
It's like they should just got like a dummy.
Yeah, why did they? Well, we learn in the interview that they actually like found this girl in pre-production at like a fucking party.
Post-production. They were done with the movie.
Yeah.
And then they were at a party.
Mm-hmm.
And the production manager, I guess, was a body double for Tom Cruise at one point.
Allegedly. Or he just told girls at parties that to try to get
He
laid.
goes to parties in the Bay Area and like he's like,
so
I'm a body double for Tom Cruise.
Oh my god, really? Wow.
Yeah. If you watch Top Gun, have like an hour 45 in, that's me.
Yeah. So you want to come back to my sacrifice table?
So they meet this girl at a party, and then somehow, like, they said it was like Wilford Brimley's like fucking idea.
They didn't even like, the interviewer was like, okay, what's up with the girl in the bikini? What's going on with that? And they were like, didn't even give a straight answer.
It's like, oh, we met her at a party. It was in post-production.
It wasn't my idea.
We Wilford Brimley looking motherfucker wanted to end it with like a wink. Like, and it's like, okay, so like, did Wilford Brimley realize how like goofy this video was? And like, I don't know.
He seemed pretty serious about it.
I mean, it was his brainchild.
Yeah, it's yep. Okay, I'm trying to find let's
while you look for that, yeah, they mentioned that the Eric Pryor, the cultist, that he was legitimately scary, is what they said. Like, like he comes off kind of goofy in the video, but like they said the way he would talk about things, you could tell it wasn't like him recanting things from a long time ago. It sounded like shit he actually fucking did. Like, this dude did kill animals and shit.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I found the part of the interview. The interviewer says, the one scene that takes a 180 from everything else would be the bikini model ritual sacrifice demonstration. Whose idea was that? And the production manager says, oh man, I think I met that bikini model during post-production at a beach party in La Jolla. She and her friends are the girls Devin told I was the body double for Tom Cruise. I was in pretty good shape back then. Oh, so Devin, which guy was he again?
Devin's the guy, the director.
Okay, so the director, he and the director were at this beach party, and he was like, hey, my friend over there, yeah, he's a body double for Tom Cruise.
Oh my god.
And so then he says, I wasn't there for that shot, but I remember hearing about it. That might have been Devin's idea. Kind of a nod and wink.
So the director is the same guy that ended up doing like music videos and stuff like that. He wasn't like super Christian. He just did Christian music videos and some other stuff. And like, he was just like, he thought he could make money off this project. That's why he took on this project.
Yeah.
So I could see that being his idea, because he's just like, fuck it, I want to have some fun.
Yeah.
And like, so
that would explain why it's just like tacked on to the end of the video.
There's there's no real explanation about anything else like that. And I don't know, it's that part's interesting. You know, I'm thinking about Eric Pryor right now. Can you imagine, like, if he actually sacrificed people? I would hate to go out by getting sacrificed by some guy with a fucking mullet.
Oh my god.
That is like one of my biggest fears now. I'm like, I don't want to get killed by a guy with a mullet. Anything else?
No,
like,
Henry, they're getting to you. They're trying to make you scared. It's not real.
I'm scared of the fake Satanists.
It's not real. But in this interview, when he says kind of a nod and wink at the project, that actually reminds me of, like, this is off topic, but information about our last episode that we forgot to mention. So for those of you who listened to our last episode on ESP, we're talking about a part in the credits where they credit Glenlivet 12-year-olds.
Right.
And we were like, what the fuck is that? Who is Glenlivet? Well, one of our viewers actually brought to our attention that Glenlivet's
12 years age
is a whiskey.
It's a whiskey. But we couldn't find any information because, one, they spelled it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They spelled it as a name versus, the whiskey is one word, Glenlivet's, and then the credits say 12 years old, and the whiskey is 12 years age.
Yeah. So when we Googled it, it didn't come up.
Yeah.
But, so that was just the team doing a wink and a nod that the whiskey helped them get through that production.
Which makes sense because there was one shot that we didn't talk about where the girl looked like she was like about to pass out. And I mentioned, I was like, dude, she is like on something in this shot.
Yeah, we were just like, oh my God, we were hanging out the other day when we got that message about the whiskey, and it like came flooding back that we were like, oh my God, we didn't even talk about that scene.
Where we joked that she was drunk, but apparently she was probably actually fucking drunk.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like we've become so fascinated with ESP. Like, look, let's be honest. So like Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults, it's a classic. It's great.
Everyone needs to watch it once.
You need to watch it at least once. However, it's one of those tapes that like everyone in our community, the VHS community, they know about it and they watched it, and it's a little overdone. Like, it's fun to talk about, but it's, in terms of like obscurity, it's really not that obscure, especially compared to something like ESP. So it can be not as exciting to talk about. So I'm kind of like, man, let's talk about ESP again.
So the last episode also, I mistakenly credited Larry Flint for being part of Penthouse. Larry Flint is actually part of Hustler, that other porn magazine besides Playboy. The owner and founder of Penthouse is Robert Charles Joseph Edward Sabatini Guccione.
Robert Charles Joseph Edward Sabatini Guccione.
And you know what? Looking that up, I don't blame myself for not remembering that fucking name.
That's a mouthful.
That is quite the mouthful. Holy shit. But I think that really does wrap this up. I don't think there's really a whole lot else to say. It's about Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults.
It's a romp. It's good. But there are more obscure tapes out there for us to find and watch. And
everyone's seen this one at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Watch it once.
Speaking of which, after we're done recording, we're gonna go on a little venture to go hunt for some tapes. Hopefully
some other cool stuff.
Yeah, hopefully we find something fun. If you have any suggestions on films you would like us to watch or try to find, or if you have any general comments, you just want to send us a message, feel free to do so. vhsaturdaypodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can go ahead and follow us and DM us or leave a comment on our Instagram, which is also VHS Saturday.
Thanks so much for listening. Feel free to follow us on Spotify. If you would like to hear us on any other platforms, let us know. We're always looking to reach out and find more of an audience. So we will see you next week. But until then, remember, be kind, rewind.